Good morning, everyone. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Welcome to this week's Post-Cabinet Press Briefing. To the members of the media who are in the room with us, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And to our viewers and listeners via the various media platforms, thank you for tuning in. This morning, I have with me the Attorney General, Mr. Darshan Ramdani, and he will be providing a number of updates for us as it relates to his portfolio. He will be speaking about the court building, and he will also provide an update the recent sexual offense case that has generated quite a bit of reaction from the general public. Mr. Ramdani, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Press Sec. I'm glad to be here today once again. To all the members of the media present, good morning to you, listeners on the mainstream media and social platform. There are two main things that I wish to discuss today. As noted by the Press Sec, the first relates to the completion and readiness of the High Court facilities. The second relates to the recent sexual offense dealt with by the Magistrates Court in Grenville, and our own response to those concerns being expressed in the mainstream media and social platforms. But let's start with the court facilities. I am pleased to announce that after some considerable time that the retrofitting of the CLICO building is now completed to house 4 brand new high courts with accompanying administrative offices, including facilities for the public. The building was handed over to the government as being ready for court use. Yesterday, there was a test run in one of the criminal courts dealing with real court matters. Members of the public were present. This test run revealed that a few adjustments had to be made, and those are being presently carried out. For the civil courts, furniture is right now being carried across from the temporary court facilities, which were at the Parliament building, as you all may know. I am advised by the Registrar of the Supreme Court that all of the court facilities will be ready for work on Monday. I must point out here that of the 4 judges assigned to Grenada, 2 are presently off island. One is to return this month end, and the other, who is on assignment in Antigua, will return mid next month. The task before us now in relation to the court is to meaningfully tackle the backlog of cases before the high courts. Court lists are being generated, and they will advise the public of sittings in a new building, and those will be out shortly. Our chambers, the Attorney General's chambers, will continue to be ready and to provide all support as we have been doing over the years. And I'm sure the bar will be also ready. All of the stakeholders will be ready to get right back into it and to get the work of the dispensation of justice on its way. That being said, it would be remiss of me not to express our own gratitude for the support the Minister and the Ministry of Legal Affairs, my own office, has received from all stakeholders to return us to where we are. I must also express gratitude to those judges who during this last year has worked tirelessly in less than ideal and often challenging circumstances to get the job done and to ensure that cases were dealt with in the High Court. I wish to now turn to the other matter. This is the recent sexual offense dealt with by the Grenville magistrate. This is a matter which has raised considerable public concern in both the mainstream media and on social platforms. Some of the features of this case is now well known. I'm told that the offender is a 24-year-old man who is Grenadian and is living in New York. He was here visiting from the USA when he committed this offense. He caused a young 5-year-old to perform oral sex on him. When he first came before the court charged with indecent assault, he was placed on bail, and on the second occasion when the matter came again, he pleaded guilty to the offense. He was sentenced to a fine of $1,500 and to pay compensation in the sum of $600 related to expenses incurred by the family. I'm told through discussions with the learned DPP that the file is being sent across, and so we will examine that in more detail. Now, real concern was expressed by many. Some complained that an investigation of the outcome was necessary. Why should a person be given a fine for this offense? Some asked. Some called it a mere slap on the wrist. Others stated that our laws need to be revisited. In short, there was much public outcry as letters and various articles call for legislative amendments, among other action. Now, I must say right off that this is an unfortunate matter, but as with each allegation of its kind, it underscores the role each of us have to play in the fight against criminal offending and how we as leaders and civic-minded members of society must treat with such occasions when there are complaints against particular sentences dispensed by a court of law. I will confirm that there is nothing wrong with informed public criticism, which scrutinizes the correctness of a judicial ruling. Comments from leaders and right-thinking members of society, however, must be informed comments. Once this is kept in mind, then proper informed public criticism is what is expected of leaders and every right-thinking member of any democratic society. It leads to an interrogatory process. Questions are asked. Processes are adopted as a result. These are the things which can be done and would be done as a response to what one may perceive as a bad judicial decision. I wish, however, to make the point that's quite another thing in maintaining the respect for the rule of law and to instantly decry the competence of any judicial officer or ascribe their decision to personal motivation. This undermines the independence of the judiciary. People will speak. Responsible people will speak responsibly. Since this sentence was questioned, it is important to appreciate the law relating to indecent assault. When it is summarily charged, that is charged as a summary offense, the law related to indecent assault provides for a maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment. That may be accompanied by a fine or maybe simple imprisonment. That said, the sentence in this case, on its face, raises serious questions, some of which I hope to answer for you today. Other important questions that are raised by this sentence can only be answered by our judicial system. For this reason, I am comforted that the Commissioner of Police, on the advice of the Director of Public Prosecutions, has launched an appeal against this sentence almost immediately. The Commissioner of Police and the DPP are to be commended for their swift action. The complaint on the appeal is that this sentence is manifestly inadequate. Essentially, that this was not a case for such a sentence. The complaint on the appeal really is that the exercise of discretion and the approach of the sentence was unreasonable and inappropriate. Now, this must be viewed as one proper response that leaders and right-thinking members of society can give in relation to this matter. And as far as the inadequacy of the sentence is concerned, it is now for our Court of Appeal that must answer that question. That this is an unfortunate case is no doubt, but through the appeal court we hope we will get answers and perhaps in that process gain greater insights on the working of the justice system and how the sentencing of these types of offenses should be approached and whether they fit society's ideas of punishment and deterrence. We will have the opportunity to listen to the reasons given by the magistrate for this sentence, and we will see how these reasons are dealt with in a court of law. This is how the rule of law operates. This is how the rule of law operates in a democracy. This is how justice is dispensed. Now, I did say I was going to address other questions which have been raised by this case. Let me do that now. I know I may not address all your own concerns, but I know you will ask me questions at the end. At that time, I will answer you as best as I know how. Those that I do not answer immediately, I'm sure you can make contact with me to provide you with more detailed answers at the appropriate time. This question of the adequacy of our laws relating to the penalties is not a new one. Ever so often over the years, whenever there is a sexual offense brought before the courts, there is concern raised about the adequacy of the punishment. We will recall early in this year there was another magistrate court sentence that was questioned, and there were concerns raised about that as well. But you may all recall, especially you members of the media, that in 2012, a number of significant amendments were passed by our Parliament to, among other things, increase the penalties related to most of the sexual offenses. In fact, it's a bill entitled, it's an act entitled Act Number 29 of 2012, and it sought to amend over 61 sections in the criminal code, changing, among other things, and increasing penalties for many harm-related offenses as well as many sexual offenses. You will recall, I am sure, that those amendments were as the result of serious consultation with all stakeholders, and they were really answering the concern being raised by members of the public throughout the years and at that time. These amendments were all discussed, debated in Parliament and the Senate, and became law. Those who follow those changes will appreciate that many important aspects of the criminal law were addressed. As far as sexual offenses are concerned, you will recall, for example, that once the offense of defilement, that is unlawful carnal knowledge with a child, carried a maximum term of 10 years where the child was over the age of 13 years but below 16, and 15 years where the child was below the age of 13 years. In 2012, in answering public concern, Parliament increased those specific penalties to a maximum of 30 years imprisonment for defilement of a child under 13 years and 15 years maximum when the offense was committed against a child over 13 and less than 16. You will also recall that rape was another offense where the penalty was increased in 2012. Before 2012, rape was punishable by a maximum imprisonment of 15 years. In 2012, this was increased to a maximum of 30 years imprisonment. In fact, the 2012 amendment expanded the definition of rape to make it possible for a woman to also be guilty of such an offense. It is to be noted that before 2012, indecent assault was only an indictable offense. There was no power given to the magistrate to try such an offense. Whenever an allegation was made of indecent assault, it had to be charged indictably. It had to go through a preliminary inquiry, sometimes lasting 2 years, and then it had to go to the High Court, where, of course, the man was pleading not guilty, for a trial. Sometimes that also lasted a year or 2 years. At that time, on trial in the High Court, indecent assault carried a maximum of 5 years imprisonment. Again, it must have been an answer to public concerns and criticisms. But in 2012, it was considered that indecent assault, having regard to the various ways in which it could be committed in terms of seriousness, from a simple touching to more serious touching, that this was an offense that for many reasons could be properly dealt with by a magistrate. In other words, there was no reason why many of these types of offenses, indecent assaults, could not be tried by a magistrate. It was recognized that if a magistrate would be given such a power, many of these offenses would be dealt with in a very expeditious manner, rather than last several years through the court process, thereby saving children and victims of having to go through the trauma of being in the courtrooms for such a lengthy period. I'm not at all suggesting that in some cases that it doesn't deserve going to the High Court. Now, while efforts were being taken to reduce trial times over the years, Parliament has given this new jurisdiction. Now, indecent assault can be tried summarily, punishable by the same maximum of 5 years that a judge could have once given for the offense. I must say that since the beginning of this year, and I'm speaking for the time when I joined the Attorney General's chambers, we have been continuing the work on other aspects of laws related to the trial of sexual offenses. Please note, this is not a reaction to this matter. As I have stated since the beginning of this year, we are continuing the work. The AG's office and the Minister of Legal Affairs have made conscious decisions to continuously assess our current laws. Right now, we are working on those aspects of laws which relates to the protection of vulnerable witnesses at trial so that victims can be safeguarded during the trial process. We are also looking at amendments to remove corroboration requirements for young children. As the law currently stands, if all the evidence and the only evidence against an alleged offender is the evidence of a child of tender years, then unless that man pleads guilty, it would be virtually impossible to convict him. One view which is being considered is that the possibility must exist for a conviction to flow from such evidence, that is, just the oral evidence of the child without any independent corroborating evidence. Meaning, once the child is believed and such evidence has satisfied the magistrate or the jury so that each of them feels sure of the guilt, then that should be the end of the matter and the person should be found guilty. As it stands at the moment, it is possible that some cases may be dismissed because of the uncorroborated evidence of children of tender years. But as I've said, we are working on that. We are also considering amendments to remove the oral preliminary inquiry. As you may all know, as I mentioned earlier, every serious offense charged in Grenada has to go through an oral hearing before a magistrate, unless, of course, the defendant consents to a paper committal, and they hardly ever do. This means that such inquiries can last up to 2 years, and then if there is evidence to indicate that an offense has been committed, as it is called by lawyers a prima facie case, it goes up to the High Court for trial. This in itself creates an opportunity for delay, and I've spoken about that. The point I'm making here is that while good people will be disturbed by these offenses and often be in shock and alarm, it is important to appreciate that significant work has been done legislatively. Grenada is a leader in this regard on many fronts. The stakeholders are at work and in tandem. The police force has its special victims unit, which is expected to be engaged on every sexual allegation in the country so that protocols which have been established may be employed. Those, and the most important one of these, of course, is ensuring that where a child is involved, that the Child Protection Authority is involved in the earliest stages of the matter. If I might at this point remind all that the 2012 amendments actually added a legal obligation on parents and guardians who suspect legal abuse of their children or their ward. This obligation requires them to report their suspicion to the police. Failure to do so, the law actually punishes it by a term of imprisonment. It must be that the policymakers, Parliament, the stakeholders felt that it was necessary, I don't think to seek to imprison parents and wards, but to seek to remind them of the serious nature of us being ever vigilant. The mother of the child in this instant case is a brave person. We hope that some healing can take place for both the child and herself and their family. We hope that the child may be able to move past this and live a normal life. At the AG's office, as I've said, this work is ongoing. It is not reactive, it is responsive. These are deliberate assessments being continuously made, and we listen. We pay attention. In this regard, I wish to identify the media and those public commentators who will speak or write in the public domain. We are grateful for the work you do. Many a time you point out important matters which assist in the shaping of policy and change. You drive public discussions. That said, it is equally crucial for you to make yourself aware of the various laws and administrative measures, that the changes those laws have brought, so that you can comment responsibly. We can't be aware of everything, but let us do the necessary research if we are to speak of them. In seeking to protect the public, let us at the same time educate them. It is the duty that we owe them. Each of us has a role to carry out. We at the Attorney General's chambers are working hard to perform that role. We hope that every stakeholder equally take that challenge and do the best they can in taking on the responsibilities in fighting these offenses. I thank you very much, and if there are questions, as I'm sure there will be, let's hear them.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Dashan Ramdani. As he has indicated, the floor is now open for questions, and members of the media, as is customary, please identify yourselves and your media house before asking your question.
Sherry and Noel, GIS. I have a couple of questions for you, AG. The first, I want to deal with the latter part of your presentation. You mentioned a bit about that issue that has, had the public outcry and heavily debated on social media with the sexual offense. The commissioner, through the DPP, has filed the appeal. And on that same date, it was stated that the perpetrator of the act has left the country, went back to the United States. Most are asking now, what will be the process?
Thank you. That was a useful question, and I thought I would let you ask it, because I was actually, it's one of the notes I have to address, and I'm pleased about that. Not pleased about everything else. The way our system works, and let me say this as a start to the answer to this question. I've spoken with the learned director of public prosecutions about this matter. And as far as his memory goes, and my own memories, I've been in the prosecution department myself for a long time. This is the first time that the prosecution department has filed an appeal against a summary of offense, a sentence imposed by a magistrate in Grenada. First time ever. I wish to make that point to indicate the seriousness in relation to which this matter is being treated. In fact, I have practiced in several other jurisdictions as well in this region, and the learned DPP himself indicates that as far as he knows, none of the OECS territories have filed an appeal in relation to such a matter itself. That being said, what is the outcome? Now let me say this. It is quite open to the Court of Appeal to impose a sentence, to throw out the fine that was imposed, the $1,500 fine, to say that that fine was inappropriate, a bad exercise of discretion, and to in turn impose a sentence of imprisonment. Now, if that is done, the offender was served with papers, I understand, before he left the jurisdiction, the appeal papers. If that is, regardless, however, once the Court of Appeal makes a ruling which includes a sentence of imprisonment, then it is expected that the offender will return. But if he does not, and let me go quickly to that, if he does not, we have powers of extradition, which relates to persons residing in America. In fact, for most of the world today, we have in the past extradited people from the U.S., bringing them back to Grenada to face trial. And so if needs be, and that is the result of a Court of Appeal decision, we have the capacity and the ability to have that person return to Grenada and to serve a sentence if that is imposed on him.
Just for clarity, so the Court of Appeal can hear without his presence?
Well, if process has been indicated that he has been served, yes, with the papers, then he should make himself available for every court hearing. That would be one of the obligation. And if he fails to turn up, then the court could very well go ahead in his absence and treat with the matter, once they are satisfied that he had that obligation to turn up. I am advised that papers were served on him. Yes?
I want to go now to the issue of the high courts, the fact that operations will begin next month. You said the part of the task would be to tackle the backlogs.
Yes.
What's the plans for that? Well,
you wouldn't know that for some time we have been operating with 2 judges. Yes? Over the last year, there were 2 judges in jurisdiction, except an occasional 3rd judge who would come in to fill in for some time. 2 months ago or so, we requested of the Chief Justice to have assigned to Grenada a full complement of 4 judges. So we are now up to 4 judges, 2 civil courts and 2 criminal courts. We're going to make a continuous assessment of how these courts proceed with the matter. We are hoping that the courts, the judges that are here, at least those who were here for the last year, these are hard-working judges, and they have done considerable in terms of attempting to tackle the work, even though they were facing challenging circumstances. And so it is hoped that with this continuous assessment that we will make a determination whether there is a need for an additional court. That decision will have to be taken on the assessment of how the work is ongoing. We expect that with 2 judges in the civil courts, 2 judges in the criminal courts, there is going to be a serious attempt to bring the backlog down. But that has to be done with an assessment. Yes? Measured by an assessment, that is.
Good morning, everyone. Nisha Paul, the New Today. Mr. Ramdani, I want to speak to you about the same sexual-related matter. Are you in a position to explain, because I know that the new sentencing guidelines took effect at the beginning of the month, and there are certain practice rules and a procedure that a magistrate and a judge must follow in order to reach a sentence, which they have to give an explanation as to how, or to justify how they came to the sentence that they hand down. Are you in a position to speak to what the guidelines say in terms of this particular offense, indecent assault, and, that would have allowed the magistrate to use her discretion to hand down such a sentence?
Again, thank you for that question. It's a very important question, and much of the answers, I suspect, will be found in the reasons that we will find that the magistrate has given in this matter. When an appeal is filed, a magistrate is obligated to provide reasons for the Court of Appeal. And at that time, we will all become aware of all of the details. But let me address the issue relating to sentencing guidelines. You're quite right. The Court of Appeal, the JLSC, has been working with a sentencing guideline committee. And they have been working for more than a year. And recently they produced a number of guidelines for a number of offenses. And the offenses which they tackled in the sexual arena are the offenses of rape and unlawful carnal knowledge. It has been made clear if you go to the court's website, and I urge all of the journalists to please look at this, because this is very important. I expect that all judicial officers will have made themselves aware of it already, because there have been some training. You will note first that the court has made it very clear that they have not provided specific guidelines for the offense of indecent assault, but that they're working on that and they're going to get that sorted out very quickly, I'm hoping. But coming to the more fundamental aspect of this question, which is those general principles that you follow in arriving at a sentence. And whilst I can't be very detailed at this forum in relation to this matter, let me say that generally sentencing courts, magistrates or judges, are told to examine. The guidance given to them by the Court of Appeal is that you should examine the harm that the offense causes as a starting position to find a starting point sentence. Now, I don't want this to go down to a lecture in law, but every sentencer, and I have sat for some 30-something plus months dealing with criminal offenses myself as a judge. And so I've dealt with sexual offenses and I've imposed sentences for them. In fact, for all of the sentences that I've done for sexual offenses, I have delivered a written ruling so the public can be aware of the reasons for the sentence. Is that you look at the harm that the offense causes, and you look at the culpability of the offender, meaning what it was his mind. In assessing harm, you look to see, whether there was a significant humiliation, degradation, in relation, and I'm speaking now in particular about sexual offenses. If there's extreme humiliation or physical harm, those things put the offense on the top of the category. And if it's not extreme but it is significant, they put them at the second level in the category. And that category, let me try to be as clear as I can, because this is a very technical approach, yes? And it's an assessment that every court has to make. Now, where you have a maximum for an offense, and let's say, like for rape, the court has given specific guidance for rape. Rape is a 30-year maximum. The court says if you find those extreme factors relating to harm, and there's a lot of culpability related to the offender, there's a great disparity in age, and he might be a repeat offender, then what you do is that you start at a range of 60 to 75%. I'm not sure of the 60, but the 75% in relation to the maximum. That's the starting point for the judge. Yes? And where you have such a starting point, that starting point, of course, is only a guidance. You can go down, you can go upwards, depending if the person is of previous good character, never committing an offense in their life, has a lot of positive things going on, they contribute to society quite a lot, they can lend to the development of the community, they have strong values, but this was a slip, a one-off. Then the court can bring that down considerably. And this is the general approach. So you look for those significant aspects. I'm sure many right-thinking members of society will start to work this out. But the guidelines are there as guidelines, and they are not to tie the hands of the court. Every court exercises discretion. And as we sit here, as our viewers are listening, what was presented to the magistrate is very important. All those details and all those circumstances are very, very important for a court to determine where to start in relation to an offense and where to end in relation to that offense. So there are many factors which are taken into consideration. Of course, I did say to you earlier in my own address was that I share the view of the learned director of public prosecutions and the commissioner of police that on its face there are questions being raised about the adequacy of this sentence. And we need to ask these questions, and we need to find answers for these questions. So let us see.
Okay, you also spoke about a penalty, a term of imprisonment for a parent who does not report suspicions of child sexual abuse. Can you tell us what that penalty is?
Again, you ask a question that makes me smile for a different reason. One of the points I was making here today was that all journalists and all commentators should make themselves aware of the amendments, because there are quite a lot of call for the government, for the Attorney General's chambers. Every time you hear a sexual offense in the news, somebody says, well, they got to change all the laws. They got to pass new laws. Well, we have been addressing these concerns over the years. In the law, the amendment in the 2012, the maximum is a 7-year punishment. And again, you must know maximums are there as maximums, and a magistrate or a court can start anywhere depending on the nature and seriousness of the offense. So if a guardian with a child in their custody, for instance, living with a child and knowingly seeing someone abusing that child, that would be a different case from a guardian not seeing it, but having a little suspicion that something might be going on. And that would gauge a court reaction to determining where that punishment should lie. But as I mentioned then, and I will mention again, this is important, I think the underlying rationale for that law is for Parliament to make the point that we as parents and as guardians of children, we have an important role to play. We must be ever watchful of our children and those under our care and control. we must make sure we carry out that responsibility and ensure that we keep an eye out on things. And we must report things when we are suspicious that they have occurred.
Okay, and finally from me, you spoke of some retrofitting works taking place on the Carriacou building. Can you speak to, can you disclose what are they?
Well, it was going to be what I would end on by saying all of you that the registrar and I have discussed this matter, and we feel it is important that the media should be invited to the new courts to have a walkthrough. And you can bring your cameras, and we're going to set a date on it, hopefully sometime this week, and so you will get a chance and an opportunity to see them for yourself, and you will be able to see what we have put in place.
The view has been expressed following yesterday's trial run that the one court facility that was in session was a bit small in terms of accommodation for members of the public and jurors alike. What is your response to that?
Well, views are expressed, and views are expressed, and views are expressed. There are so many views. One can only, the proof in the thing is in the eating, or in this case, the proof of the court is in its functioning. A court functions to dispense justice. I have looked at it personally. I am satisfied to myself that we have adequate facilities. I will ask that you come there, and for the members of the public who will sit there, the judges, let us see how comfortable they are in the long run. A court is not often a comfortable place. You turn up there when you have legal issues. I'm sure many of us will hardly have a chance to look at the height of the ceiling. But we invite all of you to come, the media that is, and to come and have a look and examine it for yourselves. Yes? Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? GBN, MTV, nothing from you guys this morning? Okay, so it is safe for us to conclude the proceedings. Okay, Attorney General, you have been very thorough in your presentation. The questions, I think, asked by members of the media would have helped to further bring out information that the public is seeking. Do you think there's anything additional you need to say in wrapping up?
I am very grateful for this opportunity to be here today, and for the questions that were asked, because this is a topical matter, and I must say that I was engaging the Commissioner of Police in conversations about this matter and the SVU, Special Victims Unit, and I am not pleased at all about it, but I must say that we have had a significant reduction of sexual offenses being reported this year. Over the period January to September last year, and for the same period this year, there has been, I'm told by SVU, a 27% reduction in the reporting of sexual offenses. For me, I would like that to be at zero, but we are where we are, and work is ongoing. We are making inroads. The courts are paying attention. The Court of Appeal is there to right it when it may not be so. And we at the AG's office is continuing the work. I will end where I ended last by saying, please, all of you, you can only assist if you make yourself aware of the various changes that have been made, and so that we can educate the public and keep them on top of the fight against this type of offense. I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Attorney General. That brings us to the end of this week's post-cabinet press briefing. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. I'll see you again next time.
level rise are of increasing concern to coastal communities of the Caribbean. Approximately 70% of this problem is caused by the production of electricity using petroleum fuels. Electricity production from renewable energy technologies such as wind, hydro, biomass, and geothermal are proven solutions to replace petroleum fuels while saving valuable foreign exchange.
The Caribbean Renewable Energy Development Program is working with regional governments to transform the electric sector and thereby ensure the optimal addition of renewable energy into the region's electricity supply.
CREDIP, working towards a sustainable energy future for the Caribbean.
What you have to give, they underestimate you. But you've gotta let your light shine. Shine out the darkness, shine out the fear, and rise like the sun. Sometimes they look at you and they don't see nothing more but this greatness in all of us. It's all stored in you. And though I say things to your face to break you down and mess away, oh no, don't let them win. Yeah, yeah. And though they laugh and though they jeer when you fail and no one cares, oh no, you can't give in. We are more than what they see. Come on, let your light shine through. We are more. Go ahead and live your dream and show them what it means. We are more. Sometimes you get so lost that you feel you can't go on. And sometimes things fall apart so that you can rebuild better than the sun. Oh, be strong. And though they say things to your face to break you down and mess away, oh no, don't let them win. Yeah, yeah. And though they laugh and though they jeer when you fail and no one cares, oh no, you can't give in. We are more than what they see. Come on, let your light shine through. We are more. Go ahead and live your dream and show them what it means. We are more.
Why is that done? Why is that? Hallelujah.
Yeah, good night, sir. We were just wondering if we could use the code for some practicing, please.
That's a no-no, you know. That's a no-no. Are you just a bunch of troublemakers?
No, you just can't watch us and judge us like that, Father. Just give us that chance.
Who you calling father? Are you your father?
You what my father then?
All we want to do is dance.
That's all we want to do.
And you want to dance? See, can you dance to this?
Come on, man. We won't break anything. I tell you, we're positive. We're about oneness. I mean, look, we one group, you know? And we just want to show the people that we can make a difference.
Make a difference?
Yes, sir. Let me show you what we are.
Yes, secure. Give us a chance.
Hold on, please.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
I'm giving you a chance. But check on yourself, you know.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah. For my people, them. Some green fun has just begun. Don't be alarmed, don't be concerned. It is a new generation of dance and music, and you all are invited to join into it.
I try but can't refuse it. Addicted to the music. Just wanna get into it. Baby, I might just lose it. It's flowing through my veins. Intoxicate my brain. Just wanna dance tonight. We gonna shake it up. Break it up. We gonna take it up. Wake it up. We gonna shake it up. Break it up. We gonna take it up. Wake it up. We gonna shake. Dance. Right now. Shake. Dance. Right now. Through the speakers it's thumping. Let's get this party jumping. Get off your seat, do something. Stepping, break dance or crumping. DJ turn up the sound.
Yeah.
I hear it all around. Feel that beat hit the ground. Hey, Dwayne John, get down.
So out of another dance, I might just start melting with the right kind of music to lose myself in. My feet start moving and my body start dancing like me can't refuse it, similar to a spell thing. Look how my people them coordinate and show you even in the dance we can keep the faith. And we knock on bolts, we convoke in love. Every move we make is to the music.
We gonna shake it up. Break it up. We gonna take it up. Wake it up. We gonna shake it up. Break it up. We gonna take it up. Wake it up. We gonna shake. Don't wanna stop. We're just hanging out. We can't get enough. We're just having fun in the club and now. I see you on the floor. Just wanna dance some more. Shake down and break it up. Take down and wake it up. Shake down and break it up. Take down and wake it up.
Love to see my people dancing, unite as one, positivity enhancing. Who ain't on the floor, get on the floor. Hey, Mr. DJ, break it down some more.
DJ, bring that chorus back. We gonna shake it up.
What we gonna do?
Break it up. We gonna take it up.
Everybody on the floor.
Wake it up. We gonna shake it up.
What we gonna do?
Break it up. We gonna take it up. Wake it up. We gonna shake it up.
Here we go now.
Break it up. We gonna take it up.
Go.
Wake it up. We gonna shake it up.
What we gonna do?
Break it up. We gonna take it up.
Here we go.
Wake it up. We gonna shake.
Shake it up and work it up. Boy, these kids and them was really good, boy. I wish I could come.
This one is going out to all the Grenadian lovers.
Last night I had the strangest dream. I sailed away to China in a little rowboat to find you, and you said you had to get your laundry clean.
one is going out to all the Grenadian lovers. Hear me now. Sing for them.
You're on the road and now you're praying it back. The road, the high was rocket, but now you're feeling cocky. You look to me and you see your back. Is that the reason why you're running so fast? And you said, ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Nobody's gonna slow me down. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. I'm running on a one-touch ground. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving.
Nobody gonna break my stride. I'm gonna keep on moving. Coming off stand still, I'm gonna keep on grooving. When I walk down the streets of revolution, hear the sound of music till we reach Mount Zion. Nobody slow me down, and I won't touch ground. Feel Jaja presence and I feel them all around. Good vibration in a you and me. We bless everybody in a community.
Never let another guy like you work me over. Never let another guy like you drag me under. If I need another guy like you, I will tell him. Never want another guy like you. Have to say no. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Nobody's gonna slow me down. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. I'm running on a one-touch ground. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Nobody's gonna slow me down. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving.
Gotta keep on moving.
Break my
Break
stride.
my
I'm
stride.
running on a one-touch ground. Oh no, I've got to keep on moving. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Nobody's gonna slow
They can't bring me down,
me
down, down, down.
I've got to keep on moving.
Gonna drive me, drive me on
Break
down.
my stride. I'm running on a one-touch ground.
Break my stride.
I've got to keep on moving.
Take us down.
It's a blessings from the Most High Jah. Fortune says so. You gotta respect that. You don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I will say again, but something I tell me, don't be in a hurry. No, Jaja is coming and he gonna be here. And when he kills you, you gonna be happy. No, so don't underestimate my capability. My disability is like a gift to me. How the people, me when you come listen carefully. I'm a handsome guy with no ability. No people who don't know much about me. They must sit down and talk about my disability. They say they don't believe the fortune teller can see. Them walking at the road, it don't bumps nobody. Them walking at the tongue, as though the country. All what them say, they can't stop me. Me full up a style, full up a quality. Me come by the mic and chat, me please everybody. I'm capable, to my ability I'm capable. Me do my duties, I'm capable. To my ability, you know. Sometimes I wonder if I will say again, but something I tell me, don't be in a hurry. No, Jaja is coming and he gonna be here. And when he kills you, you gonna be happy. No, I respect you, them have to respect I man. Said one tell the world I'm a conscious youth man. I'm blind but still I have enough ambition. What them a go say? What them a go do? What them a go say? To stop I man. Disability no is not the end of me. Anything me want to do, me have the full ability. Me full up a style, full up a quality. I'm down to earth. Me want you listen to me. Put up on no hand if you praise the Almighty. Shout it out loud if you praise Him daily. I say a little prayer for your country. I'm capable. To my ability, I'm capable. To do my duties, I'm capable. To my ability, I'm capable. Cha, to do my duties, hear this. Sometimes I wonder if I will say again, but something I tell me.
morning again, and welcome back to this second part of this week's post-cabinet press briefing. We are now going to be talking about wage negotiations between public sector trade unions and the government's negotiating team. As you may be aware, there has been a deadlock in these talks, and they have been referred to the Labour Commissioner for conciliation. I have with me here this morning the head of the government's negotiating team, Honorable Oliver Joseph, the Cabinet Secretary, Mrs. Beryl Isaac, and the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Department of Public Administration, Ms. Rhonda Jones. First, I would ask the head of the GNT, Honorable Oliver Joseph, to give us an update as to where we are currently.
Thank you very much, and let me welcome members of the media and say good morning to all our listeners and viewers. So the salary negotiation occur traditionally 3-year cycle, sometimes 4 years, with the public sector unions, the teachers, all public officers that are employed by the state. Negotiations for a new agreement will take place at the end of the current agreement. In this case, we have an agreement that will expire on the 31st of December. So the government invited the trade unions to submit proposals to commence negotiation for a new wage negotiation, wage increases for public sector union. And we had commenced negotiation jointly with the Public Workers Union and TAU. And where we are now, the talks are deadlocked, and it was referred to the Labour Commissioner. That's where we are today. But I'll ask the CAPSEC, who was previously leading the team, to give us a background and the timelines for the negotiations so that you have a better appreciation for what brought us to that stage. So I'll ask CAPSEC to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Good morning, members of the press, members of the listening public and viewing public. I'm happy to be able to share with you where we are in terms of the salary negotiations. As Minister indicated, I would be giving you a timeline, giving you the historical background into the negotiations that have taken place thus far. We would have, by letter dated 22nd July 2019, written to all the public sector unions and the staff associations, informing them that government wishes to announce the commencement of negotiations for the 2022 cycle. That is the new cycle. We also indicated to them that government would have reviewed the past processes, and in order to improve the negotiation process and to make it more efficient and effective, that government had put together policy guidelines that would set out the framework for the negotiations process. In that letter, we also invited them to a meeting on the 31st of July to discuss the contents of that policy guidelines. And at that meeting on the 31st, we did have the meeting, and we also had a presentation from the Ministry of Finance on the medium-term economic outlook, which was basically setting the stage for negotiations. You may ask, what has changed? We would have known that government has enacted the fiscal responsibility law, and under the law, both the process and the procedures for negotiations have changed. The unions, one union in particular, would have indicated that we are doing things differently, okay? But the law forces us to do things differently. First of all, we have indicated that we would want to introduce evidence-based, that is facts-based negotiations that are based on facts, and that they are driven by data economic data and also economic indices, which we know to be the inflation rates. Under the FRL, we know that there's no longer going to be any back pay. Negotiations have to be forward-looking so that whatever is agreed to will be budgeted for in the next cycle. So if we have to agree in 2019 so that the budget could be included in the 2020 estimates of revenue and expenditure. So between the 31st and after the 22nd and the 31st, we got a letter signed jointly by the President General of the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union and the President of the Public Workers Union, proposing salary increases of 7%, 8%, and 8% for 2020, 2021, and 2022. We acknowledge receipt of that letter on August the 1st, indicating that we will get back to them with a more substantive reply. On the 1st of August, we also sent the unions and the associations a letter outlining the parameters for the negotiations. In that letter, there are some major articles that I would want to raise. One in particular indicated that government is about to embark on a comprehensive public service-wide job analysis and job evaluation exercise. This exercise is very costly, both in terms of implementing and even the recommendations. Those of us who would have been here many, many years would know that in 1970 we had the Salaries Review Commission, and that was the last time that we had a change in the salary structure. And there were attempts subsequently, but because it's a costly exercise, it was never implemented until 1995, because the job analysis and job evaluation, a comprehensive job analysis and job evaluation exercise was done in 1994. And it was implemented in May of 1995. It was a courageous move because elections were in June of 1995. And since then, that exercise threw up a lot of anomalies. We have compressions in the teaching grade, where we have graduate teachers in primary school getting the same salary as the principal. So we have anomalies. We have within the legal profession, we have the nursing profession, we have the medical profession. Even in the general public service, we have managers and officers. Some of the officers they supervise receiving the same salary. Back in 2000, the Public Workers Union, I wasn't then on the GNT, an agreement was reached that they would do a pay and grade review for implementation in October 2001. When I got to the Department of Public Administration in 2002, I met a team of union and public officers trying to come up with a way that we can facilitate that article. And I said, this is beyond us. So we wrote to the Ministry of Finance and they asked for technical help, and CDB sponsored a pay and grade exercise. Now, the pay and grade exercise started in 2003, and we had Ivan in 2004, and they told us then we need to suspend the activity because conditions in the country were not right. So we resumed in 2006. A matter of fact, in the 1995 pay and grade exercise, it was agreed that every 5 years there would be a job analysis and a job evaluation exercise so that market conditions could remain current in the public service. So we had 1995, 2000, and now it's 2019. So in 2008, we did get a report from KPMG in terms of that pay and grade review, but we could not have implemented it because it would have meant that we would have had to recircle half of the jobs in the public service. So that's where the matter lay. And so the anomalies have continued to plague us in the public service, and we have been advised repeatedly the time is right for us to do the job analysis and job evaluation exercise. As I explained, it is a very expensive endeavor, both to do the exercises and the recommendations to implement. We indicated to the unions in that letter of August 1st that due to the impending job analysis and job evaluation, we would not consider allowances at this stage, allowances for this period, because all allowances will come under review as part of the job evaluation and job analysis exercise. All allowances will come under review. Preliminary work has started on that exercise, and PS can speak some more to that. So in next year, the actual work will be done, and so we have not decided yet, government has not decided when the recommendations are going to be implemented. So that again is a massive exercise, very costly, and government has committed to undertaking that exercise. We also indicated that we would want, government has indicated that it seeks a 4-year agreement, and also that would want to conclude negotiations by the 31st of October 2019. Okay, and for us the negotiations are time sensitive because, as I indicated, provisions have to be made in the 2020 budget. The budget process would have started way back in May, and we are almost now to the end of the budget process because budget is going to be read in November. So the unions on the 1st of August, so that is the 1st of August. On the 7th of August, we wrote to the President General of the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union and the President of Public Workers Union, asking them that they give us their written justification for their proposal. All they said, all they indicated in their proposal was that they wanted increases of 7, 8, and 8, and no justification. So we wrote to them and asked them for their accompanying justification. They replied on the 14th of August, indicating that they would advance their justification when we meet around the table. And they proposed that we meet on September the 12th. As it turns out, we had our first engagement on September the 12th, and back then we exchanged the usual pleasantries, and I also indicated that, I want to step back a bit, when we met on the 31st to look at the policy guidelines, they were not, where's the word? They were not supportive of what was in the document. Okay, so at that point I said to them, well, go back and discuss it among your union members and between your unions yourself and give us feedback. To date, we have had no feedback on that policy guidelines. So when we met on the 12th, we indicated that we would like to continue as we are accustomed in a harmonious way, and I also indicated to them that if we cannot reach consensus around the table, we'll have to move to the next level. So I asked them, we had a discussion, and I asked, what is their justification? And I actually had to insist because they were very hesitant to give us their justification, even before we put government's offer on the table. Eventually they did, and they said, basically, they would like for their members to have a living wage. They also indicated that most of their workers were earning $1,200 a month, and in some instances, Imanis were getting more than them, and so forth. They did ask us to submit our proposal in writing, which we did. That is proposal in writing. which we committed to do. And so we indicated to them that government's offer is based on the inflationary rates for the 4 years. And we had our information provided by the Ministry of Finance, which indicated that it came from the ECCB. So the inflation rates, 1% 2020, 1.4% 2021, 1.49 2022, and 1.81 2023. We indicated that our primary justification for the increases that we are going to offer is the inflation rate. We also indicated to them that government has other commitments of HR commitments to its employee. Government has to pay increments, $2 million. They are about to make the advance payment to pensioners who are eligible pensioners. Regularization, we have the continued regularization of teachers. We have nurses, we have pharmacists, doctors, all of that is in the work. So you would glean from that government is not just have to pay increases, but they have other matters, other HR-related matters that they have committed to doing for the employees. Well, we had a back and forth, and they indicated that based on, so we put on the table government's offer of 1%, 1.5%, 1.5%, and 2%. And they indicated that there was no real benefit because it is just increasing the real income, because what government is proposing is just to take care of inflation, and they had other arguments nonetheless. However, at the end of that, before we got to the end, I asked them, do you have a counter proposal? And we got no, there was no reaction. They indicated to us that government was not serious and that government should put an offer that is vastly different from what is on the table. That's the exact words. And I would also indicate that at that meeting, they were all, well, they weren't too supportive of the 4 years, but they indicated that they would be prepared to consider a 4th year if it was sufficiently attractive. Okay? While they were not fully supportive of the 4 year, they would consider a 4th year if it was sufficiently attractive. We would have had the costings done by the Ministry of Finance for the union's proposal, and it is $90.5 million. And it's not just for the Public Workers Union and the members of TAU, it is for all government employees. All government employees, it would cost the government $90.5 million were it to agree to the union's proposal. Also, it would breach the primary expenditure rule, okay, if government were to honor the union's proposal. So the primary expenditure rule will be breached, and we know that as part of the FRL, government cannot incur expenditure of more than 2% on the previous year. So on the 23rd so we had agreed to meet again on the 19th. But coming out of the meeting on the 12th, and our desire to have evidence-based, fact-based negotiations, we found that the arguments that were advanced by the union was basically, did not grounded in facts. It was emotional arguments, because it doesn't matter. Whatever we work for, we could always say that the money is not enough. No matter what we get, we could say it's not enough. So just saying that we want our employees to have a living wage, I think it is based on just emotional arguments and not grounded in facts. So we asked the Ministry of Finance, give us some data, okay? And so we weren't able to meet on the 19th, and so we indicated to them on the 17th of September that we will communicate a date for a meeting. And we did get the information from the Ministry of Finance, which we shared with the union. We wrote them on the 23rd of September, and we indicated, yes, that we did agree to put another offer on the table. But upon deep reflection, further reflection, we thought it prudent to delve further into the justification that they had advanced as the basis for their percentage increases. And we indicated that having had time to do the research at which we gave them the information, we believe that the central argument on which their request is based is not supported by the facts. Now, what we found out from Ministry of Finance was able to give us is that for 2016, 17, 18, and 19, the inflation rate was 1.7%, 2017, 1.7%, sorry, 2016, 1.7%, 2017, 0.9%, 2018, 0.8%, and 2019, 1%. What was government's offer? What did government pay out? In 2016, employees who were in the service from 2014 to 2016 received a one-off payment of $1,750. 2017, employees were awarded a 3% increase, and if you would recall, the inflation rate was 0.9, they got 3%. 2018, 0.8, they got 3%. 2019, 1%, got 4%. We also indicated that the average salary for 2016, because they were saying it's $1,200, it was $2,158. 2017, $2,281.60. 2018, $2,301.20. 2019, $2,354. That is the average salary of public officer, and not the $1,200 that they were arguing. So we told them that based on our findings, we are of the further view that the union may wish to revise its position, and we await their response. In other words, we did not find merit in the argument, and the facts did not support the argument, and so we await their response. We are yet to get a response to that letter. We sent a reminder, and we are yet to get a response to that letter. Nonetheless, we agreed to meet on the 8th of October. Again, we ask on the, well, we spent the greater part, 3/4 of an hour on the 23rd of, when it was? 26th, we met on the 26th of September. And we spent it greater part, 3/4 of the time, where they were complaining against the presence of one of our members. And so we asked if they had a counter proposal. They still did not move. They were still at 7, 8, and 8. They still did not move. And we met on the 8th of October. Minister would have been in the chair. And we asked, at that point, Minister had put a 0.5% on the 2020, making it 2.5. And he asked for the counter offer. There was still no movement. They were still at 7, 8, and 8. Okay, and so Minister declared deadlock. We wrote to the Labor Commissioner on the 10th of October, inviting the Labor Commissioner to conciliate the matter as provided for in law. They wrote to the Minister a letter on the 14th of October indicating that they would want to continue negotiations with the GNT, and they suggested a date of the 22nd of October, that is incidentally today, and ironical, it's today, and the they have indicated before the Labor Commissioner that they can't meet until the 24th, when they had offered to meet today with us. Nonetheless, the Labor they also would have reduced their proposal to 6.5, from 7 to 6.5, 8 to 7.5, and 8, they remained at 8. Was there. Well, one might ask, what would have constrained them to adjust the proposal after we had declared deadlock? The matter is before the Labor Commissioner, so there is a procedure that is laid out in law, so we cannot be engaging with them outside of that procedure. The law says the Labor Commissioner shall, he didn't say may, shall. So the matter is no longer with us as GNT. It is deadlocked. It is before the Labor Commissioner. We were invited by the Labor Commissioner on the 17th to do pre-conciliation meeting, which we attended that meeting last Thursday, and we were told that they were going to meet in with the union in the afternoon session at 1. I'm advised that that meeting did not take place. A matter of fact, they would have handed him a letter at 3 something indicating that they would want to have the engagement with GNT. We were told that we should prepare to have an engagement with the union and the Labor Commissioner on Friday, and that meeting did not come off. They did not attend that meeting. So this is where we are in terms of the background to the negotiations. Okay. It has been lengthy, but...
Right, thank you very much, CapSec. So, where are we? The union at 90.5 million as indicated, and government, when we declared deadlock, was at 26.5. The union has come down, and the current demand is for 89 million. So they has dropped by 1.5 million. We have indicated that we are so far apart that unless we get a conciliator or a mediator that will bring the parties closer, then engaging around the table, we are not making much progress. And that's clear because the union said they do not recognize the deadlock. Well, under the labor law, the other side do not have to agree. And there was clearly no movement, so there is deadlock. No movement, you declare deadlock. So if you have to wait for the other side, either party, to agree, then it will be difficult for anyone to declare deadlock, because all the other party have to say is that we do not agree. So the argument that they do not agree, and the letter to me that we could go back around the table, when the matter is before the Labor Commissioner, when we indicated that we were prepared to go to conciliation and there look at fresh proposal, and they have refused to attend the both meetings, even when the Labor Commissioner rescheduled a meeting. They wrote a letter saying they're not available between the 21st to the 24th. But they wanted to meet with the GNT on the 22nd. But if they're not available to meet with the Labor Commissioner, how come they are available to meet with the GNT? So the matter will, before the Labor Commissioner, he will decide whether the matter should go to mediation if there is no, if the parties are not prepared to meet. Well, we attended all the meetings and they have not showed up. Now, the fiscal responsibility legislation, which is now guiding the way negotiations are conducted, because it's a different era now. It is not like before where you just, the union, based on the strength, will come to the government and negotiate and for high increases. We are prepared to consider any reasonable and justifiable demand by the union. And we have said that to them, that we are prepared, the GNT and the government is prepared to consider any reasonable demand. But if you look at the demand, you cannot consider $89 million in wage increases when you have to take everything else into consideration. All the other sectors in the economy, all the unemployed, the needy, everything else that the government has to look at the holistic picture. and allocate its resources in the most optimal way. So today, that's where we are. The refusal of the union to attend conciliation talks with the Commissioner of Labor, and we await the response from the Labor Commissioner in this matter.
I want to make two other points, is that government is engaging with 5 unions and 2 staff associations. We would have had second round discussions with 4 of the unions, and none of them have moved. Not one would have moved from their opening position. So it is very frustrating because in negotiations, you don't begin with your optimal, neither the government side nor the union. You don't begin with your optimal, but you're expected to move. The government side would move up, unions move down, and they have all refused to move. So it's frustrating. After 2 rounds of negotiation, we are still at the same point. The unions would have maintained their position, and they remain just like the Rock of Gibraltar. How do you get, and why then, if you refuse to move when we were in open dialogue, what will change? Why are you insisting that you come back before GNT? As the Minister indicated, we need a third person, we need a conciliator to hear both sides and come to some decision. Why are you insisting to come back before GNT when there was the opportunity and you failed to move? There are rules, so you don't get to change the rule because your strategy may not have worked. When a plane leaves the gate or when a train leaves the station, you either on it or you have to get another one. Okay, so the rules are not there. We all have to abide by the rules. It's not there for our side or the government or the unions. You had the opportunity to make a downward movement and you refused. But it's not just them alone. It is 4 of the 5 public sector unions that we have engaged with. We are meeting with the second round negotiations with the other later today. We know they are coordinating. But we have to move. October 31st is almost here. They have indicated to us that they are not bound by time. We are, because the negotiations are time sensitive. Government has to look out for its employees because it has to make provisions in the 2020 budget for any increases. And if it's not done sooner, what will happen when January comes? What will happen? Who will be the person to blame? The person of persons to be blamed. Negotiations is about give and take. We can't be holding steadfastly to our position and you expect one side to move upwards and we keep in our position. It does not work that way. Anything else?
P.S. Jones, would you like to add anything to the contributions that were made, or shall we just open the floor to questions? Okay. So, members of the media, the floor is now open to questions. The members of the government's negotiating team have elaborated on government's position, what has led to where we are now, the options that are available based on the law. So the floor is open to questions.
Chrisanne Mitchell, GIS. I would like to know how long will the process take, knowingly that there was a deadline on October the 31st?
The deadline of October the 31st was discussed with the unions, and they are aware of it. Because as Ms. Isaac indicated, we want to make provisions. But it seems to us that the union is not interested in reaching to a conclusion by that date, or seeking the workers' interest to ensure that that happens. So, as we indicated, we are putting to the Labour Commissioner. Under law, which all of us are guided by, the Labour Commissioner can send it to the Minister of Labour for mediation, and we will attend mediation to see if we can get some movement in the deadlock. That's where we are now.
Do we have any further questions from members of the media? Nothing further? Okay, so I think we've been very clear in putting forth the position of government's negotiating team, establishing what has led to where we are, the steps that have been taken, the movements that has been made by government, and the employment of procedures as provided within law and the collective labor agreements for the resolution of deadlocked disputes. And as the head of government's negotiating team has just indicated, government remains willing to seek a resolution to this matter.
Yeah, so just to emphasize, the government is willing to continue in the presence of a conciliator. So it's not that we have abandoned negotiation. The government also have to take into consideration all other sectors. As it negotiate and as it look as what is reasonable, it must consider the other sectors in society, the unemployed who have no payday. We have to consider that as well. So it is not just that the government is unwilling to pay. You know, we wish we had 90 million to pay the workers. Yeah, we love that. But we have to be realistic and come to the table taking all these factors into consideration. So we end on the note that we are still willing. If the union is willing to meet with a conciliator, we are ready.
Thank you very much, Honorable Oliver Joseph, Head of Government's Negotiating Team. Thank you as well to Cabinet Secretary and Acting Permanent Secretary in the Department of Public Administration, Ms. Rhonda Jones. So that brings us to the end of this morning's part 2 of this morning's post-Cabinet press briefing. Thank you for staying with us this long this morning. I trust that you now have sufficient information on the current wage dispute between the government's negotiating team and the Technical and Allied Workers Union and Public Workers Union, which represents a significant proportion of public officers here in Grenada. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Ms. Simone Lewis, National Coordinator, UNDP Global Environment Facility Small Grant Program, Father Andrew Bernard, Chairman of the NULO Board of Directors and other members of the board, Sister Margaret Yamoha, Executive Director of NULO, and the other staff of NULO, Mr. Everton Corner, Contractor of ELSIC, Mrs. Prudence Greenage, Corporate Communications Manager for Grenlec, members of the media, trainees, friends, and well-wishers of NULO. We will now listen to the welcome and opening remarks by Sister Margaret Yamoha, Executive Director of the New Life Organization.
Indeed, this is the day that the Lord has made, and we rejoice and we are glad in it. Because today marks the beginning of a huge milestone for us here at NULO. One of the things that God has endowed human beings with is the ability to dream. But the ability to translate dreams into reality, you need to step outside of the dream in order to work it out. And that is exactly what has taken place to bring us to this special day. And we can only say thank you to God. In a very special way, I would like to welcome Ms. Simone Louise. Now, I have to say, before the start of this project, I never knew Ms. Louise, but the very first meeting we had, that was the beginning of a bond that I believe is going to continue as long as she's in Grenada. Young going in Norway, right? All right, good. All right, so for as long as she's in Grenada, that bond, or maybe the other way around, as long as I am in Grenada,
Canada to provide biometric processing for visa applications in Grenada. Details of this story and more in the National Report. Welcome back with the details to the news for Monday, October 21st. I am Sherry Ann Noel. Canadian officials will be in Grenada for 2 days next month to carry out biometric processing for persons wishing to obtain visas. The visit by the Canadian officials on Monday, November 18th and Tuesday, 19th, is as a result of a partnership between the governments of Grenada and Canada. As part of the visa application process, Grenadian nationals must provide biometric information, that is fingerprints and a photo, when applying for a Canadian visitor visa, study, work, or temporary residence permit, or for permanent residence. During the upcoming November dates, Grenadian visa applicants may take the opportunity to provide biometric information in Grenada rather than traveling abroad. For those planning to travel to Canada for study, business, tourism, family reunions, or other reasons, they must complete the online visa application as soon as possible in order to take advantage of the opportunity. Canada is pleased that officials will be able to travel to meet applicants on site in November, and it is hoped that this ease convenience will be fully taken advantage of. However, outside of this visit, standard procedures remain for Grenadian nationals to travel to biometrics collection points in Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines or Trinidad and Tobago at all other times. The exercise is geared towards Grenadians who anticipate travel to Canada, those who have already applied whether online or by mail for a visa, work or study permit, or for permanent residence and have received their biometric instruction letter, as well as nationals of other biometric information required countries residing in Grenada planning to travel to Canada. To book an appointment for biometrics collection, applicants must write to bdgtn@international.gc.ca, referencing the visa application file number. All applicants will be required to bring the biometrics instruction letter with them in order to have their biometrics taken. The biometrics collection will take place on November 18th and 19th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Radisson Grenada Beach Resort. Moving along, the Mount Horn Child Development Center, which will cater for children from 6 months to 3 years, is expected to be completed by the end of December 2018. It is the first of its kind to be constructed in St. Andrew with funding from India UN Development Partnership Fund, United Nations Children Fund UNICEF, and the Government of Grenada. The project, which began in November 2018, is expected to provide a safe haven for children in the Mount Horn community and surrounding areas. Resident Roland MacDonald speaks to the importance of the facility.
This facility is extremely important to Moncton and the surrounding communities because Moncton is one of the most populated villages with children in the entire Northwest constituency. And to have a model center like this, being the first one built in St. Andrew and having it in Moncton, it's a blessing for us. As we all know, the brain develops most rapid in a child's life in its early stages. And as a result of that, this facility is so important. It will enable the young ones to develop the social skills that will enable them to better engage with other children and with other adults growing up. The people of Moncton and the surrounding communities are extremely excited about this facility because one has said it is a model facility, it's the first of its kind in St. Andrews, and it will give parents a safe place, a very safe place, where the children will be housed and the children will be taken care of. As you all know that this facility will house about 60 children between the ages of 6 months and 3 years. And they will be divided into 3 different groups, 6 months to 1 year, 1 year to 2 years, and 2 years to 3 years. And I'm convinced that after children graduate from this facility, they will be in a very good state of mind upon entering the primary school facility.
He commended the workmen on the project along with the government.
I would really like to thank Minister Delma Thomas and the government for having the vision to give us such an excellent facility in Moncton. Moncton is a place, as a community, that has its challenges, with younger people growing up. And I'm convinced that such a facility will help the young ones to change their behavior and change their attitude as they become adults because of the importance of this facility and what it would have done for them in their early childhood years.
This is the National Report. More news after the break.
Grenada, it's coming as the Ministry of Youth, Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts brings to you National Youth Week 2019 and it's one full week of activities, vibes and action as the nation turns their attention on the nation's youth, and it's from Saturday, October 19 till Saturday, November 2nd under the theme Embracing Opportunities, Sowing Higher. October 19th and 20th, National Community Service Weekend, island-wide. October 26th, Health Walk and Ministers Address. October 28th, Youth Vibe. October 29th, St. John's Youth Parliament. October 30th, Job Fair and Career Day. October 31st, Fun Nights. November 1st, Discovering Talents and Expo. November 2nd, it's National Youth Award. Sunday, November 3rd, Ecumenical Service and Peace Concert. So urging everyone to be a part of Youth Week 2019, October 19th to November 2nd.
Welcome back. The Grenada Community Development Agency, GrenCoda, has handed over supplies to rural farmers as part of a drive to promote climate-smart agricultural techniques. Mina Buka, the Public Relations Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture, attended the ceremony, which was held on Friday.
Water shortage is one of the greatest challenges faced by farmers as reduced precipitation and increasing temperatures affect levels of water that is available. This places increasing pressure on small farmers. The Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, recognizing the importance of promoting climate-smart agricultural techniques to alleviate the problem, made it possible for 6 rural farmers to receive material. The material will be used to improve water access and storage on their farm, as well as increasing the nutrient value of soil through composting and rainwater harvesting. The ministry held the hands of the community organization, the Grenada Community Development Agency or GrenCoda, by assisting with the procurement of the materials. This was made possible through a project backed by the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO. A symbolic handover was held at the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands Conference Room on Friday, 18th October.
Some of the activities that we'll be doing, taking the sargassum seaweed, the cane bagasse from River Antoine, and making it into a compost, which we will try to move the farmers from the artificial fertilizer into the alternative composting. We'll be erecting a 10 by 10 water harvesting structure. We'll be supplying you with a 800-gallon water tank so that you can use your water, all right? So some of the benefits that we are expecting from you, you will be able to rotate crops. So you'll not be able only to plant watermelon, but you could put in a little peas or a little beans or so, a little cabbage, you know. Your crop yield should increase because you have water. And of course, when the rain comes in, don't use all the water in the tank and say you go store. Use your water effectively. And we want to be able to help you, to sustain you, so you could send your child to school, you could buy from Farmer Brown shop, you contribute on a whole to the economy by that.
That's Amanda Boldo from Grenada. The undertaking is one which aims to promote food security in rural areas by involving climate-smart agricultural techniques. Farmer Emma St. Louis shared how this will contribute to enhancing her operations.
Water, especially in the dry time, no water, and the place will just get dry and cracky like cake. It will just crack up. So then the tanks it's beneficial because the land will be a bit softer and we'll be able to plant not even when the rain falling, but right through the time. So this is a great benefit, and they got my undying gratitude. I am happy for this.
Mr. Elvis Maureen, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, pledged the ministry's support to the farmers.
The Ministry of Agriculture was very pleased to partner with, of course, Grenada. And we understand fully well that the provisions made under the project was basically to procure equipment. And we know as farmers you would have a challenge. We know Grenada would have had a challenge to get the stuff cleared, to transport it and so on. So as a ministry, and we recognize what has been done under the project, we felt it was necessary for us to partner from the ministry end and to work with you going forward. In other words, what you're going to do out of this project is of great benefits to the Ministry of Agriculture and by extension the nation. We want to work with you and of course allow and maybe commit to offer the technical support.
For the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, I am Mina Buka.
Grenadians from all religious backgrounds will gather at St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church on Friday for the annual October 25th Thanksgiving Day service, which commemorates the anniversary of the U.S.-led invasion of Grenada. Over the weekend, a memorial service was held at Fort George in observance of the 36th anniversary of the execution of former Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and his cabinet colleagues. It was held under the theme, "The Memory of Our Martyrs Live On, while we seek closure through reconciliation." The memorial service was followed by a wreath-laying ceremony. Dr. Terence Marisho, in his brief remarks, says that October 19th is a day they must always reflect on.
This day, as I've always said, and we have continued to say over the years, is a day that should be set aside for reflection. A day that we should set aside to think of what happened on that day, the sacrifices that were made, the martyrdom that took place right here on this hallowed ground. And so we hope that in time, this whole area will be transformed into a virtual museum of the history of what took place in that period, so that future generations and for posterity, people can come here and learn what exactly took place here and to continue to pay tribute to those who gave their lives on October the 19th, 1983.
The homily was done by Father Roland Mark, who said while the day is seen as a day of reflection, we as a nation must also use this opportunity to preserve the history of Grenada.
We must seek to respect October 19th. We must seek to work together. It's not just about a holiday when we can just sit and relax. But no, we are called to reflect not only on events of October 19, 1983, we can go way back into history, slavery, cholera epidemic, different times in our lives, in our history, where we experience tragedy. But the point is, we must seek, by God's grace, to find it in our hearts with His strength to make this day a day that reflects dignity, respect, and at the same time preserving our nation's history.
And that story just concluded the National Report for Monday, October 21st. Recapping the top story: Canada to provide biometric processing for visa applications in Grenada. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Sharian Noel, thanking you for viewing.